Hi, this is Troy Robotech Lineman coming to you from the Force 10 Racing office today. We're not in the garage because today we're going to talk about tunes. Maybe you got some money from Christmas and it's finally time for you to get that tune for your car, but you're still new to all this. What tune do I get? Which one's going to work right for me? Do I need a remote tune? Maybe a dyno's better. I've heard dyno's better, but then there's also a can tune, which seems really easy and simple, but I don't know which one's going to work. Well, today we're going to talk about a few things about a tune, what they are, what they're not, the differences between them, and hopefully this information will make it easier for you to make a decision on what's going to work best for, well, you. So let's first start by talking about what a tune is and what it isn't. For whatever reason, in the car world, the word tune has become a noun. It's a verb. It's a verb here, it's a verb in the rest of the world. It hasn't changed, but for whatever reason, we talk about buying a tune, putting a tune on a car. Well, what is a tune? It's no different than a guitar. You pick up the guitar, you strum a string, you listen for the sound that it makes. You compare that against the sound that it should be making. You know what that string should sound like. It doesn't sound like that. So there's a little adjustment on the neck of the guitar. You adjust that, you tighten it or loosen it to get that string to play the sound closer to the sound that you have in your head that you know it should make. And you repeat that over and over. You strum, you listen, you compare, you adjust. You strum, you listen, you compare, you adjust until that string is in tune. For a car, it's no different. In a car, you take a laptop, you plug it into the car, and you go for a drive. And you record what we call a scan or a log. And this data log takes all the information from your computer in your car, records it, and then allows you to go in and compare that data to what you think the data should be or what it needs to be. You then go in and you make an adjustment. And after you make the adjustment, you save that file, upload that to the car, and you do it all over again. You scan, you compare, you adjust, you scan again. Same process. Strum or scan, listen or compare, and then adjust. That is tuning. And that brings us to what a tune is and what it is not. Now you know the process of tuning. But what is a tune? What is it that if you go out and you buy a tune and you get this thing in email and you upload that, what exactly is that? Well, you see, your car is no different than the computer that you probably are watching this video on. It has hardware, it has software, it has inputs, it has outputs, and it has a file, and that is called a calibration file. To give you a brief rundown of how your computer works so you can kind of understand this better. This isn't going to be a video on how to tune your car, but it is going to be a little breakdown, give you some basic information on what is going on in there so you have an idea of what it is you're buying when you buy a tune. So your computer is a chunk of hardware, just like the computer sitting on your desk, be it a laptop or a desktop or whatever, phone. It's a computer, it's a physical thing. And on that computer, you have software. So all the software it needs is into one piece of software called the OS. As your computer has inputs, you have a keyboard, you have a mouse. Those things are used to put information into the computer. So too does the computer in your car have inputs. Things like O2 sensors, mass airflow sensors, or MAP, manifold absolute pressure sensors, or MAPs. All these things are sensors. All these are inputs that are coming into the computer, giving it data on what's going on. Your computer has outputs too. So for instance, a monitor, a printer. Those are things that are taking data from the computer after it's processed it and displaying it or printing it so that you can use it somewhere else. Those are outputs. It sends information to those devices. So for instance, just doing something as basic as a keyboard. You type in a key and the monitor presents something. Well, just like in your computer at home, and mind you, when you're typing those keys, you're putting in the input, the monitor is returning the output, but the computer is determining what to do with that input based upon whatever software you're using as to what the output is. First-person shooter, your character moves. Word processor, you get letters. You get the idea. Your computer's the same way. It has outputs and inputs. We talked about the inputs. Well, the outputs are things like fuel injectors, your coils, when does it spark, those things, and even things like your throttle body. You got the pedal pushed down 50%. Most cars these days are drive-by-wire. It sees that pedal's gone down 50%. It goes, oh, the pedal says 50%. I need to make sure the throttle body's at 50%. And it opens the throttle body 50%. But that's the idea of how these inputs and outputs work. So that's a basic overview of a computer. But we talked about a file. And that file is called a calibration file. What that calibration file does is it helps the computer figure out what to do with the inputs. So the inputs come into the computer, and it reads what those values are. Well, those values may be in voltage or hertz. Well, how much air, your mass airflow sensor, determines how much air is coming in. Well, your mass airflow sensor doesn't say, hey, you got this much air coming in. It says, I'm reading this many hertz. So the computer has to translate, well, what do those hertz mean as far as airflow? And that's where your calibration file comes in. There are tables in that file that say, hey, for this many hertz from the MAF sensor, it means this much airflow. This is the figure you're going to need to use for your calculations for fueling. It uses that input, it figures out its calculations, and it spits out an output to say, hey, for that much air, we need this much fuel. Now, of course, there's other things that go into it, where your throttle's out, what the load is, the RPM of the engine. There's a lot of other things that computer's going to be looking at to determine that calculation. But you don't need to know all that. All you need to know is that there are tables in that calibration file that help that computer perform that task. That calibration file, that is your tune. No matter what you do, when you go out and get a tune, and you buy a tune, the file that you get in your email, I didn't say mail this time, the file you get in your email is a calibration file, period. Doesn't matter how it gets there, that's what it is. And that is the only thing you're changing your ECM. You are not reprogramming it. You are not adjusting the software that is within it. You are not adjusting its inputs or its outputs. You're not modifying those. But even that, even if you do, for instance, people talk about having a 3-bar map, manifold absolute pressure sensor, versus a 2-bar map or a 2.7. Even though you need to make an adjustment in the tune for that, you're making the adjustment in the calibration file. You're telling the calibration file, hey, we physically put in a new sensor, and that's what you do. You take out your old sensor, you put a new one in. We've made a new sensor. Your data for the old sensor is not going to work. If you take those readings from this sensor, it doesn't mean the same thing as it did from the old sensor. We need to change that. So you need to know, hey, when this signal comes in, this signal means this, not this. And that is done in a calibration file. And that is the output of a tune. So we've talked about what a tune is and what it isn't. It's a calibration file. I'm going to try, I'm going to fail to use that term from here on out. Just keep in mind when I'm talking calibration file, this is the output of a tune. So now you understand what the tuning process is. Remember, just as a quick refresher, log, compare, adjust, repeat. That is the process. Data log the car, compare what the log says against what you want the car to be doing, adjust the calibration file based upon that comparison, and then upload that calibration file to the car and repeat the process. That is tuning. So now that we've talked about that, what exactly do they mean then when people talk about hand tunes, or remote tuning, or dyno tuning, or street tuning? We're going to talk about two major categories. One is a calibration file that you receive, and it will work on any car of that type. So if you get this kind of file, no matter where you're at, Florida, Alaska, Montana, Timbuktu, this file will work on your car. It'll be more powerful, give you better performance than the stock OEM tune, but it's not going to be optimal for your car in your conditions and your fuel. Then we have the other category, and in this category you get a calibration file that is a result of the tuning process. Data log, compare, adjust, repeat. That process is used over and over, so the file that you get at the end of that is specific to your car, your driving style, your driving conditions, and your fuel and your specific mods that you may have on your car. You've heard the term can tune. What a can tune is that first category. This is a tune that you get sent, you load it in your car, and it's just going to work. Doesn't matter where you are, it's going to work. The GMPP tune for the Saturn Sky Redline and the Pontiac Solstice GXP is a perfect example of this. That tune not only would work on any car, it was smog legal in California for a couple of years, and it kept your car under warranty. Now, was that the best tune you could do? Oh no, because it had to keep your car under warranty. It had to pass smog in California. But it gave you 30 more horsepower at the crank. It was better than what came from the factory, and it was from GM. But that tune, if you got it in Florida, you got it in Georgia, you got it in Washington, you got it in California, you got it in New York, you got it wherever, it was the same exact calibration file, no matter what. This is why they call it a canned tune, because it's a tune in the can. You open it up, it just works. There's nothing special about it. There's no special process you have to do. You don't have to go through the whole tuning process. That's been done so that this works on your car and anyone else's as well. When you talk about the trifecta bass tune, the basic trifecta tune, that is a canned tune. Now you can order that saying, hey, I have an intake, or I have this, or I have that. They have canned tunes for those kind of setups, knowing, hey, we may tweak this a little bit more because you have an intake, an exhaust, and a downpipe. That brings us to the second category. And that second category, if you're talking remote tuning, dyno tuning, street tuning, all the same. These are all actual tuning sessions. What happens is you'll get a starting calibration file. That calibration file is different than your OEM file. You may have told your tuner, whoever's doing the tune, you may have told them, hey, these are the things I have in my car. He's going to set up a basic calibration file that takes those things into consideration, so he has a good starting point. But that's all it is a starting point. They load that into your car, and then you do the tuning process. You data log the car. They look at that data log and compare it to what they're expecting or what they want those numbers to look like. They make an adjustment to your calibration file and send it back to you to upload to the car and start again with another data logging session. And you repeat this, and depending upon what you have done to your car, how extreme your modification list is, and their experience, this can take a couple sessions. You may take 3 or 4 sessions to get this down. It may take a couple months to get it down just right. Again, it all depends mainly on your level of complexity as far as what you've done to your car. If you have a Redline or GXP turbo car and all you've done is like an intake, make charge pipes, and an intercooler, and downpipe, and exhaust, just basic bolt-on stuff, that's not too radically different from the basic file. And so your custom tuning session may only take 3 or 4 tries. Why do I talk about all these steps, and why do I mention this difference in tune? Because you've heard dyno tuning, street tuning, remote tuning. Don't we have to discuss all those too? Well, yes and no. But the difference between those isn't so much how it's done, but where it's done. All 3 of those, whether you're talking remote tuning, dyno tuning, street tuning, all of those types of tuning all require the data logging, comparing, adjustment, repeat process. They all do that. They all do that. So let's take dyno tuning first, because dyno tuning is the one that everybody, that is the god of tuning. You must have your car dyno tuned. All hail the mighty dyno tuning gods. Well, what dyno tuning is, you drive your car to a shop that has a dynamometer in the ground, and it's a chassis dyno. A chassis dyno measures how much power you have at your wheels. The numbers you get from the manufacturer, your car has 270 horsepower from the factory. Well, that's taken at the crankshaft. And crank horsepower is always greater than wheel horsepower, because that crank horsepower has to travel from the crank, through the clutch, or torque converter, through the transmission, through the drive shaft, through the differential, out the axles, to the tires, and down to the ground. It takes power to do that. And so there's some loss of power from that 270 horsepower you have at the crank. Well, on a Redline or GXP, that may be 225, 230 at the wheels. But a dyno can measure it at the wheels. And this is why most of the time when you're talking about aftermarket tunes and aftermarket parts, they tell you their numbers in wheel horsepower, because these companies aren't pulling the engine out of that car to test how much power their product made at the crank. They're doing it at the wheels. Now, they may calculate drivetrain loss and give you a number at the crank, but know that the number you really want is at the wheels. The other benefit to a dyno sheet is when it comes to data logging the car. When you data log, you want to have as many data points as you can get so you can see what the car is doing at each specific spot in the tune. Calibration file. See, I knew I was going to screw it up. And the way you do that is you put your car in a gear that's close to 1-to-1 and go from about 2,000 RPM to red line. Well, in our cars, that's 4th gear. Now, I don't know if any of you have taken our cars to 4th gear at the red line, but that's well over 100, probably 130 miles an hour. I've never done it, so I can't tell you. And I do know that at the top of 2nd gear, you're right about 96 miles an hour at the top of 2nd. So you see the issue here. You can do that on a dyno. You can't do that on the street. So dyno tuning has a benefit where you can put it in a gear that's going to give you a nice long amount of data over the entire power band to make your comparison to get a better tune. And you're able to do that wide open throttle. And at that spot, you're tuning wide open throttle power. So in a dyno graph, those are the benefits. The drawbacks are you don't drive around town wide open throttle from stoplight to stoplight. Or if you do, I don't want to see what your insurance premium looks like. You drive around town much differently than that. You cruise. Not only that, depending upon the car you have, this is mainly for the LE5 guys, your car will base its wide open throttle tuning on how you cruise around town. But the dyno doesn't do that cruising stuff. It only does the wide open throttle fun stuff. So how do you get that resolved? Well, that's where street tuning comes in. Obviously, the benefit to street tuning is you're going to get that down low stuff real dialed in. The areas of the car, of the configuration file that you drive in 90% of the time, 95% of the time, is going to be really well done, because that's what you're data logging when you're doing a street tune. You're data logging that area of the tune, of the calibration file, the most. Now, that's not to say you don't do the high-end stuff, because your tuner may tell you, okay, hit it, and you do 1st gear, shift into 2nd gear, go to the top of 2nd gear, shift into 3rd, hope to God there's no blue lights behind you, and he tells you to shut off. And you're done. You get that wide open throttle run, but it's a lot less data points because you're only doing it in the 2nd gear. It's not taking as long to go from 2,000 RPM to 7,000 RPM in 2nd gear that it does in 4th gear, so you're getting a lot less data in that run. So naturally, you're probably saying, well, why don't you do a street tune for that and then go to the dyno and get the top-end stuff done? And that's what most people do. That's exactly what most people do. They get that street stuff in first, and they go to the dyno and polish up that top end on the dyno. So then, what's the difference between street tuning, dyno tuning, and remote tuning? Well, it's where your tuner is. In dyno tuning and street tuning, generally speaking, your tuner is sitting in the car next to you, because he's the one that's going to be looking at the data logs and looking what the car is doing. He's going to be comparing it when you're done data logging, and then making his adjustments and uploading another tune and going, okay, let's go again. And in a dyno tune or street tune, you usually get those done in a day. A few hours, and they're done. You're complete, you're tuned, you're good. New calibration file in hand. Remote tuning, your tuner's not there. Your tuner may be in another state, heck, maybe in another country. In a remote tuning session, you're the one that's doing the data logging. Now, the tuner will send you hardware if you don't have it already. They will instruct you how to hook it up. They will give you the instructions on what they want you to do and how to data log your car. It's a really simple process. You plug in the tool, you open up a laptop, you open up the software, you open up a scan log session, and you hit a space bar, and then you go drive. And when you're done driving, you hit the space bar again, and then save the file. Once you've done that, you send that file, that data log file, off to your tuner. And there's where the tuner does the analyzation of that file, the comparison of that file, and makes the adjustments to your current calibration file. They send you a new calibration file, and you repeat the process. You upload that file, you go for a drive again while you data log, you save the data log, you mail it off to them, they look at it, they make the adjustments, they email you back the new configuration file, you upload it, and you see where this is going. Log, compare, adjust, repeat. It's the same process. And that's the process they do on the dyno. That's the process if your tuner sitting next to you in the passenger seat where you're driving on the street, or if you're doing a remote tune. The benefits to a remote tune. Because number one, you're getting a street tune. Remote tunes are almost always street tunes. The other thing is, if you don't have a tuner near you, let's say you live out in the mountains of Montana and the nearest tuner's like, oh, I don't know, in Indianapolis. You don't have to drive to Indiana and it would be a tune. You can do it right there in your home, at your leisure, at your pace. You're going to get a tune for your environment. So if you go somewhere to get dyno tuned, let's say you go to Florida to get dyno tuned, but you live up in New York, well, Florida's weather is a lot different than New York, and that plays a role in your tune. So if you're getting tuned in New York, well, it's going to be your environment, your conditions, your weather, your fuel, your driving style, your driving environment. Please, dear God, tell me you don't drive downtown Manhattan. But you get my point. Is it's for your car in your place. The drawback, of course, is it's usually not done in a day. Because you're doing the emailing, they're doing the adjustment when they have time to do it, and sending back the file when they have time. Then you have to be home when you get that, and then when you get home and you get that file, you got to upload it to your car, and now it's up to your schedule as to when you can drive and everything else. Let's say you want to do that dyno tune and get that dialed in, but maybe the dyno that's near you doesn't have a person that knows the Ecotech platform. They don't understand the platform. They don't know that engine. They're not familiar with tuning that specific engine. Well, this is where remote tuning can come in if you have the right remote tuner. If they're willing to do it, if they have the time, and again, I can't speak for them, they may be able to sit on the phone while you get on the dyno and when you start doing your runs, so that you can email them the data file, the data log file, right then and there when it's done. They can examine it, compare it, adjust, and send you back a new calibration file right then and there, and you can repeat the process without taking your car off the dyno. It's very rare they can do it. They're busy people. They're tuning a bunch of cars a week, not just you. So the fact that they can take their time out of their busy schedule to do this for you for a couple hours is huge. Don't take it for granted. So, with that, let's review. When you buy a tune, even though they call it a tune, you're getting a calibration file. If you start a tuning session where you're doing the tune, remember, tuning session is data log, compare, adjust, repeat. If you're going through a data session, you're going to start off with what some people have called a canned tune, but it is just a calibration file that the tuner wants to start off with and go from there. Once you start, anytime you do that data log, compare, adjust, repeats process, you are truly tuning the car because you are strumming the string, you are listening to what sound it's making and comparing it against what you want it to make. You're making that adjustment to tighten and loosen it, and you're repeating the process again to see how close you are and what other adjustments you need to make. You are doing the tuning process. Tuning is now used as a verb at this point. If you buy something from someone, they send you a calibration file, you upload it and you're done, and there is no data log, compare, adjust, or repeat, you still have a calibration file, but it's not a tune. Because they didn't tune your car. They may get it close. It's like buying a guitar from a music store. It may be close, but you still got to put it in tune when you get home. And that's what a canned tune is. It is a calibration file that will work on any car anywhere in the world. And should give you more power and efficiency than the stock OEM calibration file. There's many ways of doing the whole tuning process. You can do remote, dyno, street. Usually it's a combination of a street and a dyno, or you're doing a street tune remotely, but it's always those 4 steps. Data log, compare, adjust, repeat. That process is a tune when you are done. Your car has been tuned when you are done. Because it's your car, your driving style, your fuel, your mods, that calibration file has been written for, based upon a tuning process. Doesn't mean a canned tune is bad. For a lot of people, they don't need to have the maximum they can get out. They don't need, really, unless you're doing racing, a canned tune is going to be fine. For the majority of you out there that go driving, enjoy your car, go driving in the mountains, you're going to get a canned tune from Trifecta or from any of the other companies out there. They all sell them. They all give you one. You can get a tune like that. Go driving, you're going to notice the power, you're going to notice the difference, it's going to be very obvious, and you'll be happy with it. But for those of you out there that are getting timed, and you're looking at hundreds and thousands of a second, you'll notice you'll notice. So which one's right for you? You're a weekend driver, like twisty roads, going out with the wife, cheese, as you drive along. Can tune's gonna be fun. You're like me, and you want to get the absolute most out of it. They're not satisfied with the can tune, not because they can feel a difference, but because they just know that a can tune doesn't get the most out of their cars that an actual tuning process will. And for them, there's a value in that. And for them, that's what they want, is the best, regardless of if it really makes a difference for them in their driving style day to day. They want the best. Again, nothing wrong with that. It's what makes you happy. It's what you want. It's your car. I hope by now you can tell what your options are. You know what your options are. You've been informed what your options are. And you can take that information and say, this is how I drive my car, and this is what's important for me. I don't have time to go to a dyno. It's been a Saturday doing the dyno tuning after I've spent a week street tuning it if it takes that long with a remote tune. I don't want to go through all that hassle. I don't want to deal with the computers and all that. Just give me the upload it once and I want to be done. A can tune is going to be perfectly fine for you and probably going to make you the happiest. Because really, if you spend the extra money to do a real tune in that time and you don't see a difference, is it worth it to you? It's up to you. Now, I'm friends with a lot of the vendors out there that do tuning, so they're probably going, Troy, shut up, you want a real tune. Well, if you're like me, yeah, you're right, I do want a real tune. I'm not going to be happy with a trifecta tune, even if I could get one. I'm not going to be happy with that. And if you're not going to be happy with that, then absolutely, talk to one of our vendors, talk to RPM Motorsports, talk to DDM Works, talk to PAW, Performance Auto Works, talk to Han Motorcraft down in Florida, talk to any of them. They can all do remote tuning. And they all will be glad to help you remote tune your car and get it to exactly where you want it and where you expect it. So I hope with that, you guys have had a good holiday. And until next time, this is Troy Robotech Live and signing out from Force 10 Racing. We'll see you next time.